What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining. Welcome to Southern California Perspectives. I'm Aaron Villarreal, your host. Just wanted to take you along with me and talk a little bit about seller disclosures and contingencies in a real estate transaction here in California. They might be a little different than what you might be used to in other states, but as always, please like and subscribe. Join me on a ride or two, or maybe more, as we explore what 2026 Southern California looks like. I am currently driving through a neighborhood area in the city of Orange, California. I love this city. It's a great central Orange County city that has a lot of historic history. Well, that's redundant, but a lot of history and historical property and buildings and such. And just wanted to talk a little bit about seller disclosures. It's something that people a lot of times don't really think too much about, but the general idea behind it and sentiment behind it is when you're a seller, you've got to disclose just about anything and everything that you know about the property that you live in and own, and for however long you've owned it. Now, if you own it and you have never lived in it, like it's an investment property or something like that, there's different types of disclosures depending on if you've got that history with it. If you've lived with it, though, lived in the property for, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 2 out of 5 years of the last 5 years, the previous 5 years, then there's a different type of seller disclosure that's a little more detailed, because the expectation is you as the owner would know about the property a fair amount. So when you're filling those out, it is generally just to the best of your ability. Now, I always recommend with any sort of disclosures or any sort of contracts, don't lie. It doesn't help anyone. Makes things different or difficult, especially for the buyer, because the buyer's trying to do their due diligence, and that's very difficult if there's not transparency coming from the listing side, the seller side. And so with that, always read through not just your contracts, I always preach that, but your seller's disclosures, because if you're on the buyer side and you're buying a house maybe for the first time and you're reading through these disclosures, you want to make sure that you absorb what the seller's talking about. Some of it's kind of silly information, stuff that might not be pertinent or important for you to know. But the truth is you're buying an asset most of the time for several $100,000, if not well over $1 million, especially here in California. And so knowing what you can about the property is crucial. And then on the seller side, transparency not only helps you and the buyer, but it also helps the agents, so that you don't get a buyer on any given situation where you've disclosed certain information. You don't get a buyer getting upset at information not being accurate or questions on the disclosures that could have been avoided, if you will. So just generally try your best to tell the truth. One thing that comes up a lot that people don't realize is when you're filling out seller disclosures, you have to do everything you can when it comes to, there's a question, I can't remember exactly how it's phrased, but anytime you get a quote on a property you own for even landscaping, plumbing, any sort of work that you may or may not be getting done, that quote, even if it's verbal to you, and maybe out of the 10 years you've owned a home, it was given to you verbally 9 years ago, you are supposed to say yes, because the question asks something along the lines of, have you ever been quoted to have any work done on the property? And it's like, well, yes, the answer is yes. I have had sellers at times say no to that question, and I've had to go back and let them know that needs to be corrected and put yes, because more than likely, even if you've only owned a property for a year or two or whatever it may be and you're selling it, more than likely you've probably got a quote on something at some point, and so it's a lot safer to say yes, because the chances are that's probably the case. Now, all that said, when it comes to the contingency portion of our contracts, in California, we have active contingency. So my phone overheated again, and I apologize, but jumping back on here as I was talking about active contingencies when it comes to here in California. Our contingencies are considered active, and what that means is simply that when the contingency deadline comes, which currently the last update was a couple years ago to our residential purchase agreement, RPA, the offer paperwork contract that we submit. The RPA, the last update was a couple years ago, and that newest agreement made contingencies a standard 17 days. And by the way, I am not driving right now. I stopped because it took forever to cool my phone back down. It's uncharacteristically a little warm for Southern California today. Right now it's 82 degrees here, and I'm in Costa Mesa, Irvine again. I was in Orange, and it was 84 degrees when I was up there. But anyway, January in California, that's what you can get sometimes. Might get 80-degree days, might get 70. Anyway, all that to say, to finish out the thought, with our contingencies being active instead of passive, what that means for you is, since that latest update, the standard contract comes at 17 days for loan, appraisal, and and inspection contingencies. What it means for you is, if that date of your contingency being removed passes, that doesn't mean your contingency is removed automatically. In other states, like for me, I'm still licensed in the state of Colorado, and in Colorado they have passive contingencies. So what that means for you there is, when the deadline comes up on that date, so let's say it's January 30th or whatever it is, after that date is passed, your contingency is removed, whether you've canceled or not, if you're the buyer or the seller. So with that there in mind, California, you have to manually, with your agent, have your agent send you the contract to remove any given contingencies. Otherwise, the contingencies just stay in place. And so with all that, it's important to keep that in consideration when you're dealing with your dates and deadlines with contingencies. Always try to adhere to your dates and deadlines, because it really can affect the confidence the other side. So in this case, if we're talking you're the buyer, the listing side, you may not care about what they think, but you do want them to feel confident that you're going to actually do what you say you're going to do. Unfortunately, in this industry, there are a lot of agents and buyers and sellers who don't follow through. And so adhering to your dates and deadlines is one simple way to build that trust and hopefully have an amenable party on either side, because you're holding up your end of the bargain. If you agree to dates that you have no intention to actually adhere to, then why are you putting those dates out there whatsoever? Might as well just come in with contingencies that are longer than the standard 17 days. But majority of my contracts I write are trimmed down by a day or 3, because the reality is, most of the time, the appraisal, the loan, and the inspection contingencies, as well as seller disclosures and all the other pertinent contingencies that aren't the major 3, like the loan, appraisal, and inspection, those ones will typically come at 17 days, but you could make it 20 days for them. You could trim it down to 14. I've seen as low as, for the loan contingency, I've seen that made happen with a great lender in as little as like 13 days, or maybe even less if you're already desktop underwritten. So the thing is just try to adhere to your deadlines. It also protects your agent's reputation, and not that every agent cares about this, but I certainly do. My reputation is everything in my business, and I want to keep it, looking good, and the perception of me looking good, because that helps me to help more buyers and sellers just like you. So anyway, I know we haven't given you as many Southern California perspectives, but here we are in Irvine now, on the border of Costa Mesa, and I'm excited to hop on with you again another time. Thanks for joining us on Southern California Perspective here on my YouTube channel, Aaron Villarreal, Orange County Real Estate Agent. Super glad that you hopped on, and looking forward to the next time we can hang out and cruise California. Thanks again.